He didn't just kick me. He did it right in the living room where our friends, colleagues, neighbors, and even the new receptionist who had only joined the company a month ago were gathered for the housewarming party I had poured my heart into. One moment I was still smiling, offering trays of wine to each guest. The next, I was on the floor, my high heel twisted, the music cut off, and the entire room plunged into a silence so heavy it suffocated. Jordan stood above me, still holding his champagne glass, wearing a smile no different from that of a man who believed he'd just won something. "She talks too much," he said casually, but loud enough for everyone to hear. "Now you all know what I put up with every day." A few chuckles escaped. Not everyone laughed, but enough did to make the blood in my chest freeze. The pain from the fall was nothing compared to the silent wound inside me, humiliation with no words. 4 years of marriage, a business we built together, and he didn't even flinch as I crawled back up under dozens of eyes. In that exact moment, I knew the man I once loved no longer existed. And the one who replaced him, the one in the expensive suit, would not leave my life unscathed. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't cry. I would destroy him with the law, with my mind, and in utter silence. If you've ever been hurt by the very person who promised to protect you, stay with me. What comes next will leave you breathless. I met Jordan Ellis in a dusty old bookstore on Magnolia Street, where time-worn novels crowded wooden shelves. He stood in the far corner, deeply engrossed in a weathered Hemingway paperback. At that moment, I thought I'd met a man with a classic soul, refined, perhaps a little lonely. He spoke gently used, elegant words, and had sorrowful eyes that made you want to open your heart. I was managing my aunt's small food delivery startup. He said he was chasing a tech dream, a personal blog written on a second-hand laptop, and hope. We dated for 6 months. He proposed quickly, and I thought it was true love. My friends called him ambitious. I called him a man who knows what he wants. A few weeks later, I received an inheritance from my mother, 5 million naira. I didn't hesitate to use it to help build our shared dream, a tech company bearing his name with me behind the scenes, quiet, meticulous, managing every receipt, balancing every book. Within 2 years, he started gaining recognition. Not much, but enough to buy his first car, rent a small office, and wear suits I once personally had dry cleaned. When he suggested, "Let me handle the company finances. You just be my queen," I laughed, unaware that from that moment on, I would begin to disappear from my own home. Little by little, I wasn't a queen anymore. I was just the doorkeeper to the kingdom he built on my blood and tears. After he said, "Just be my queen," I laughed, thinking it was a privilege. But in truth, it was the first line in my vanishing act. The company meetings I used to lead and take notes for became after-hours parties for Jordan and his new associates, mostly women with glossy hair, smoky eyes, and none of them called me Ms. Selena. I got used to strange hairs on the pillow, foreign perfume on his shirts, and lipstick stains in wine red on collars I once ironed with care. Anytime I spoke up, he would smirk and say, "Are you accusing me now? You're paranoid. You don't trust me because you lack confidence in yourself." I started to believe it. I shrank myself, gave him space to grow. I skipped dinners with friends, canceled family trips, and abandoned myself thinking I was preserving love. Until that night. Jordan had just signed a major contract with a domestic tech firm. I had no idea about the celebration party until I saw staff dragging tables into the living room. Over 60 guests. A list I never saw, no invitation, and not even a word of thanks. I put on my nicest dress, carried the wine tray through the crowd, feeling like a stranger serving in my own home. Then I heard him laughing with his friends. "She's very traditional. But don't worry. She's learning her place." One comment. One small shove, one push, one burst of laughter, but maybe that was the real fall, not from a slippery carpet, but from the raw truth I had given everything, only to become nothing. That night I decided I would not slam doors. I would not shed tears. I would fight back quietly, rationally, and no one would be able to stop me. After the music resumed, as if no one had just been shoved, I climbed the stairs, locked the bathroom door, and sat on the cold tiled floor. No crying, no screaming. I just stared at the tiles as if counting the cracks in my own life. I didn't sleep. I didn't eat. But I did do one thing. I opened the old wooden box where I had stored every document Jordan had never cared about. One by one, I reviewed them. Company registration papers. Joint bank account contracts. My mother's will. House deed. A legal power of attorney signed by Jordan 3 years ago. My heart pounded not from pain, but for the first time in months. I felt an unshakable silent power. Everything Jordan was enjoying, the company, the house, the car, was under my name. He had walked proudly on a red carpet, paved with my trust, forgetting who had laid each stone. The next morning, he didn't apologize. He just tossed his keys on the table, annoyed. "Why did you embarrass me in front of my friends?" I smiled very gently. "I embarrassed you, Jordan." "You haven't seen anything yet." He smirked. "You can't do anything. You're just my wife." I stood tall, looked him straight in the eye. "Wrong. I'm the owner." A pause. Then he turned away as if my words meant nothing. The moment the door closed behind him, I called the bank. My first move: freeze every joint account. Revoke his signing rights from the company. By noon, his card was declined at the gas station. By afternoon, the electric bill bounced. By evening, he called me 17 times. I didn't answer. I made one call to the locksmith. That night when he came home at 11:42 p.m., drunk and furious, pounding the door like a madman, I stood behind the curtain lights off, holding the new remote that changed the gate code. And I smiled. In the dark, I saw light. That night, I didn't just lock a door. I locked a chapter. And my campaign had just begun. Jordan slept in his car that night. I knew because I stood by the upstairs window, arms folded, eyes unblinking. Not a word, not a move, just silence, but the kind that carries weight. I watched his headlights fade, watched him pacing, pounding on the gate, yelling into the intercom like a man rejected by his own home. But the truth was, it was never his home. He lived on borrowed title. I was the name on every document. At 3 a.m., I finally went to bed. Not because I was tired, but because I knew one thing: the game had begun, and I held every card. The next morning, Jordan disappeared. Probably sought shelter with a friend, maybe Leo, the same man who once said behind my back, "If she starts acting out, there's plenty of younger ones who'd gladly take her place." Fine. Let them take care of each other. I wore a white suit, the very one I wore when I registered our first business under my name 5 years ago, not for anyone else to see, just to remind myself I once stood tall on my own, and now I would again. I went to the bank and calmly requested to transfer full withdrawal rights for both our accounts, personal and corporate, to me alone. The manager looked surprised. "We've already received a freeze request. Anything else, ma'am?" I laid it all on the table. My mother's power of attorney. Company registration certificate. A copy of the will. The car loan contract under my name. Documents proving I was the primary investor. 10 minutes later, he nodded. "As of today, You are the sole authorized handler." I didn't smile. I didn't celebrate. Because this wasn't revenge. This was restoration of dignity, intelligence, and myself. 2 days later, Jordan came back, but not alone. He showed up with 2 police officers and a defiant look on his face. I was watering plants in the backyard when the doorbell rang like a fire alarm. I stepped out, crisp white shirt hair tied low, a file folder in hand. One officer spoke. "We received a report from Mr. Ellis that you've unlawfully seized property belonging to your husband." I smiled gently, not mockingly, not condescendingly, just enough to cause a pause. "I understand, and I've prepared everything to assist you." I handed over each document, house ownership certificate, bank account records in my name, company documents showing me as sole founder, a domestic violence report I quietly filed a week earlier with medical proof of injuries. One officer read slowly, nodding. The other turned to Jordan. "Mr. Ellis. Ulysses Ellis. All assets are legally registered to Ms. Moore. If you wish to contest, you'll need to take it to court." Jordan began shouting. "She's insane! She stole everything from me," I calmly responded. "No one stole anything, Jordan. You just forgot. You never owned any of it." He lunged forward, and the officer immediately stepped in stern. "Sir, we advise you to leave immediately. Any further threats will be recorded as evidence." As Jordan retreated, his hand shook, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar feeling of losing control. I stood tall on the front steps, unfazed, as the iron gate shut behind him and the car drove away for the first time in years. My heart beat to the rhythm of freedom. A week later, on a sunny Thursday afternoon, the doorbell rang again. I was thinking about a crucial meeting with our company board the next day and almost ignored it. But when the intercom screen lit up with the face outside, I froze. She had softly curled hair, caramel skin, and deep, resolute eyes. She wore a pale pink blouse and carried a thick folder. Just one look. I knew. No introduction needed. She walked in fearless. "I'm Renee. I'm not here to stir trouble. I just thought, you deserve the full truth." I invited her in. We sat across from each other, 2 women who had known the same man all too well but had never shared the words. Renee spoke. "He told me you were his ex-wife, already moved out, and that he was waiting for the asset division to finalize." I believed him, but the first time I visited the office and saw your wedding photo still on the desk, I knew something was wrong. She pulled out evidence screenshots of messages, recorded calls, photos of him with other women, not just her, but at least 4 others. She lowered her voice. "I might have unknowingly enabled a liar, but I refuse to keep being a pawn." I looked at her. In that moment, I didn't see Jordan's mistress. I saw a woman like me, once convinced she was the only one, only to realize she was just another link in a chain of deceit. I reached out my hand. "We'll end this. Not with tears, with the law." And so we began. Organizing files, collecting evidence, reaching out to the other women, summoning witnesses. This wasn't a solo battle anymore. Now it was the image of women standing side by side, not competing, not resentful, just united in one mission to break the cycle of manipulation and silence. The war entered a new phase, no longer quiet tightening, but public confrontation of the truth. After weeks of working with Renee and my attorney, we filed a city-level lawsuit against Jordan. Primary charges: financial fraud, unauthorized use of corporate property, and systematic deception via personal relationships. I also submitted a motion for full executive control of the company, which had long been under my legal ownership, though still manipulated by Jordan through a network of loyal personnel. We reported numerous suspicious transactions to the tax department. Vague money transfers, luxury restaurant bills, extravagant gifts to non-payroll individuals. Everything was logged, stamped, signed. No gaps. I emailed an official suspension notice to Jordan alongside a legal restraining order barring him from entering company premises during investigation. The next day, he showed up at the office, his usual arrogance in full display, but security had been briefed. He was escorted out in front of employees, some of whom had once laughed when I fell, now silently watching. I remained silent in the media, but a week later, I released an official company statement. We are undergoing internal restructuring to protect shareholder interests and ensure full transparency. The legally registered founder and owner, Selena Moore, will personally oversee the transition. The public erupted. Reporters reached out. Headlines emerged. The woman behind Empire's rise, who is Selena Moore? From victim to visionary. Selena Moore's comeback. While Jordan scrambled to deny everything via a shaky self-recorded podcast, evidence from Renee and the other women began surfacing piece by piece. No scandal necessary, just the truth bright enough to burn through every mask. Victory in court didn't happen overnight, but when it did, it crashed in like an unstoppable wave. The court ruled Jordan Ellis must repay all misused corporate funds. All assets Home Car's office were officially and solely owned by Selena Moore. His petition for company reinstatement was permanently denied. Most importantly, his personal fraud file was forwarded to criminal authorities. The day the verdict was announced, I walked out of court without looking back. Outside reporters swarmed. They didn't call me the victim, they called me the founder. Within 3 days, my official LinkedIn post reached over 2.4 million interactions. I didn't win by shouting louder. I won because I had evidence and refused to back down. Women don't have to choose between softness and strength. We can be both resilient and kind. We don't take revenge. We reclaim what was always ours. Thousands of women commented below, women who had once stayed silent, swallowed humiliation, been told they were too sensitive, and now felt seen. The press called me the silent strategist, the woman who didn't need to raise her voice to win justice. And Jordan. He vanished from social media. His podcast was taken down for lack of authenticity. Brands once associated with him quietly deleted posts pretending they'd never known him. As for me, I still went to work every morning, drank coffee at the same place, and biked with my daughter on weekends. But now whenever I walked into any room, no one saw me as a shadow anymore. They looked at me as if they knew I was the one who rewrote the ending of a story women were too often forced to leave unfinished. I thought everything was over until I received a letter from the company's legal department. A warning that Jordan was filing a counter lawsuit, accusing me of unfair division of marital assets. A final attempt. A desperate lunge. My attorney simply chuckled. They don't know you still have the ace up your sleeve. I nodded. Because I had never rushed to use it, I trusted in justice long enough, and I knew patience always comes with rewards. I opened my personal safe. Inside was an old USB drive long underestimated, but it held audio recordings of strategic meetings where Jordan openly admitted to transferring company profits into his personal account. Arrogant words, misogynistic remarks, explicit instructions to manipulate financial data. I said nothing. I simply forwarded the recordings to the district attorney's office along with a single note. I believe this country deserves to know who's trying to turn the law into a joke. A week later, the counter lawsuit was dismissed. At the same time, Jordan was officially placed under criminal investigation for income fraud and intentional shareholder deception. I wasn't present at the interrogation. I was in Boston attending the Women in Tech Leadership Conference, where I had been invited as the keynote speaker. My topic: rebuilding from ruin, not just with hands, but with mind. At the end, a student asked, "If you could go back to the day you first met him, what would you do differently?" I smiled, not bitterly, but with sincerity. I'd still love, but I wouldn't give away my power. Love doesn't mean blindness. Trust doesn't mean abandoning intelligence. And forgiveness doesn't mean ignoring the truth. I left the stage to a standing ovation. Not because I was a victim, but because I had survived, stood tall, and turned every wreckage into a weapon. 1 year after the trial, I returned to the very boardroom where Jordan once sat in the chairman's seat, his hand resting on the polished oak table, his gaze silencing others, not with respect, but fear. Today that chair still stood, but the person sitting in it was me. The executive board rose in applause. They weren't clapping because I had won. They clapped because for the first time the true leader had entered without hiding behind a man's name. I ended my speech with a single sentence: never mistake a woman's silence for helplessness. She might just be collecting evidence. The room went completely silent. And then I pulled a red envelope from my purse and placed it on the chief legal officer's desk. "This is the next lawsuit." Against the shadow investment chain, Jordan secretly registered laundering money through 3 shell companies. I just received confirmation from the IRS. The entire room froze. A junior assistant's hand trembled, dropping her pen. I smiled, stood up, and straightened the chair behind me. Then I turned and said loudly enough for all to hear, "He thought I would stop once I won. But no. I'll stop only when he has nowhere left to fall." I walked out of the room, my heels striking sharp echoes against the marble floor. And in the sunlight filtering through the 40th floor window, I knew I was no longer just a survivor. I was the ending of a man who thought he was untouchable. And if you're hearing this story, remember this: no one can lie forever when the person they underestimated most ends up holding the scales of justice.